All right, welcome to Artcasters 359 with two special guests, returning guests, friends of the show that you guys might recognize.
And
Um,
Jim.
what's up?
And Jim.
Oh, that's true. Jim, too. Yeah, there's Jim. Um, so we'll as usual kind of make our introductions and then we'll kind of get into the topic, which I think this one will be really interesting. Jim proposed this idea and I'm curious to dig into it. All right, so you guys are on my channel. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell so you get notifications when I'm about to go live. If I start live streaming again, that would be extremely important as well, which I should be doing. I feel like I promise this every
You keep
week.
teasing it.
I know you're
But-
really dragging out. There's a lot of build up here.
But imagine you're like a fan of my streams or something like that, and then like 4 months from now, you're like, wait a minute, he's been streaming again? And it's like, there's like 50 streams you missed because you didn't hit that bell. So hit that bell. Also, make sure you pick up Jacob's Apartment and Two Stories, my two graphic novels. Jacob's Apartment in particular would be a good one because it's the newest one. And that's my wares and where you can find me and stuff. I'll just go over to my host with the most over here, Corey Kerr. Corey, where can everybody find your work when you're not gracing the cover of Striper album covers?
You can always find my stuff at coreykerr.com, and a lot of these designs up. This
Yes.
is a new one.
The new video up.
So yeah, if you can barely see that, but yeah, we've got mugs and t-shirts and hoodies and laptop sleeves, all that jazz. So you can see that at coreykerr.com. And if you want to make sure that you don't miss out on the kind of video essays that I'm doing, make sure to jump in on my email newsletter at coreykerr.com/email.
Awesome. And those are really cool video essays and relevant to the times we live in. So make sure you guys check that out. Also, I know Gary Hodges has mentioned this before, but mugs. Corey has mugs. This is an important thing. Mugs with Corey's art are a great way to go. All right, then we'll head on up to Scott. Scott, right above me. Scott, where can everybody check out your mug?
Mug. I don't know if I have any mugs. Oh,
I
my
meant like
mug.
your
My
mug,
mug.
like,
Yes,
yeah.
yes. You can find my
I don't
mug
know,
on
I'm
my
trying.
YouTube channel. My YouTube channel is Circworks on YouTube, where you will find my series Making Comics 101. It is the most comprehensive course you are going to find for free anywhere, especially on YouTube, on how to make comics. So definitely check that out if you haven't already. Plus, there's tons of other advice and inspiration and stuff there on my YouTube channel. Besides that, you can go to my website at circworks.com, where I have digital products that will help you create comics. And I have my comic books. One of those is right there. That's Josh's variant cover for my comic book, Young and the Dead. All the issues are up there, including all the variants by, let's see, we've got 3 variant cover artists on the show right now. I've got one variant by Gary, one by Josh, and one by Corey. And Jim, unfortunately, didn't want to do a variant.
I hate to say,
Don't take it personally, but
we need.
Guys, I'm vaccinated against the variant. So.
Yeah. Next, Young and the Dead, I do want a Jim Lujan cover. I think that would be amazing.
Yeah, that we'll have to figure something out. Yeah, I would love to see Jim's take on the characters and everything. So, but yeah, all that stuff's at my website. You can find it over there at circworks.com. So I guess I'll kick it back over to you, and you can figure out which one of our special guests, Josh, you want to introduce first.
All right. Well, I'm going to start with.
And I'm just wondering, I kind of had this thought that maybe, I don't know how it all came about with Jim being on the show, but I was wondering if he was getting a little nervous that we might have another Lujan that was kind of creeping in on his action after last week, and
it's a fair point.
You better get me on because I want to have the most Lujans on any show. So.
I hope he doesn't mind me saying this, but I talked to him that night and he was crying. It was embarrassing, actually. We're not live yet. I can say this, right?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
Sobbing, like that kind of like where you can't even catch your breath sobbing. It was tough to listen to.
Just call me Jim Lujan.
Okay, and on that, I will call you Jim Lujan. So, Jim, where can everybody check out your stuff?
Right here. If you go to jimlujan.com, that does
Nice.
everything you need. That'll take you to my YouTube channel, and I have all my films there, and they're for free. And you can watch series as well as films and amazing documentaries about amazing people.
Music.
Nice. So don't be Bluhan. Check out Jim Lujan.
And don't be a foolhan. Go to jimlujan.com.
All right. Jim, we'll come back to you when we talk about the topic you proposed, because it's an interesting one, and I think you'll be the best person to kick it off. Dee Dee gave us $20 and said supporting the Artcasters and looking forward to the return of Joshua Kremble.
Yeah.
Yes,
We all
Joshua
are.
Kremble.
We all are.
And she painted my grandfather a beautiful portrait of him. Again, thank you, Dee Dee.
I saw the stream where she was doing that. It was amazing. It's like
fantastic. I was blown away.
Yeah, like pastel powder. Like, Dee Dee, you have to let us know what you used for that, because it was like this powder stuff. You were kind of like, it was amazing.
Oh, was it? What's that stuff? There was a stuff.
Fairy pixel dust.
Does it look like makeup? Like.
Yeah, it looks like a makeup thing,
yeah,
but she was using that and then other things.
She had a mirror and a razor.
I forget what that stuff's called. Yeah, we had it when I used to work for the stamp company. They brought some of those in for samples, and they started selling them. And it looked really cool. Pan pastels, is that what it is?
Pan pastels. Boom.
Yeah.
Peter.
And I said that before
pastels.
I said that before she put it in there. It just came to me. But yeah, that stuff. That looks like something I'd like to play around with.
Yeah. Pan's Labyrinth pastels. All right, so that's cool though. And I do encourage you guys too, if you like if you'd like to see that video, check out Dee Dee Willingham's channel, where she's drawing Jim's grandpa's portrait. It's kind of amazing. All right, and our other guest is returning guest Gary Hodges of Dinosaurs versus Mars Box.
And
fame.
we're out of time. Well, it's
all right. Well,
everybody, but
and have a good night, you guys.
Yeah.
So Gary, where can everybody find your work?
The best place to find me these days, I would say, is right here on YouTube, under my name, Gary Hodges. If you search for it and filter for channels, I think I'm the only one on there, but you'll know it's me because the profile is a cartoony dinosaur eating up an alien. So, and I've been doing a weekly live stream. I'm actually on a little bit of a hiatus right now, where I'm pushing through a difficult portion of the drawing of my latest book, but I intend to be returning Monday for the holiday to announce the last 5 pages countdown of the drawing of my latest comic, 1979. So if you're around, if you're enjoying the day off, or if you're at work just pretending to work, tune into my channel and get some scoop.
I love it. And you guys should check out those streams. They're a lot of fun, and Gary's always super entertaining, unlike tonight. So I'm just messing around. All right, so that would be a funny. We should do that for an entire show, where it's like we all say nice things followed by the worst thing ever.
Yes, always, and just always don't stick the landing of the compliment.
Mm-hmm.
Always kind of, your drawing's been looking really good lately, which is kind of nice to see that improvement, or whatever. Just say like something really horrible. Yeah.
This episode brought to you by Passive Aggression.
Yeah, I love it. And I love that shirt, Jim. It's better than your shirts regularly are.
Thanks.
Okay. So anyhow, so okay. Let's get into the topic. I think it's going to be a good one. Jim, you brought this up. Do your materials dictate how you work? And I don't even know if I phrased that right in the title. So, but I think when you pitched it, I think I know what you meant, but I think it would be good if you kick it off so we can kind of get into it. So what made you think of this topic? And what is it?
I try to use good words many times. So So yeah, you got it right. It's the topic I proposed was, should your or does your method or materials dictate your storytelling? So for example, and it's actually a very close to the bone topic for me right now. I'm going to give you my example. I recently upgraded my computer after 10 years. And this is where the crowd goes wild. After 10 long years, I am talking to you on a new computer now. But by doing that, I lost all of my animation software.
Ooh.
I was unable, and I knew I would, because my animation software was made in the 70s that I was using on my old computer.
It actually was. It was like physical pieces of cooking ware that were very soft.
Yeah.
That's what
It
he
was,
means by software.
paper punch cards.
Yeah.
So he'd punch in keyframes and then feed it into the machine.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's what the Egyptians used to animate with.
Mhm.
So, and
a series of rocks. And,
Yeah,
and
Rocks
I
and
loved
dot
it.
matrix technology.
I loved it. I was super productive. I had my method totally down. I was very happy. And I didn't upgrade out of necessity. I upgraded because my computer's 10 years old and it was just taking forever to boot up. And it's time for me to get into the 90s, you guys. So I get a new computer and I'm starting from scratch. I don't have Photoshop. Don't have Flash. I don't have anything. And then I really got to thinking. I started looking. I took maybe 2 or 3 weeks looking at different options, and actually shout out to Paul Pate. He was very helpful in helping me research all this. We looked at animation for the iPad. I downloaded a couple of free trials of that. Looked at Adobe Animate. Looked at a lot of Adobe Animate competitors. Everything. Looked at everything, and then I just really got to thinking, which each of these methods means me modifying my own work method, and that means modifying my projects. And then it got me thinking, am I like locked into my technology dictating the kind of stories I'm going to tell?
Yeah.
And actually I kind of was. So what I ended up, you'll be happy to know, I signed a 1-year deal with Adobe. I'm currently contracted with Adobe. I got a discounted rate. I cannot mention how or why or who or what, but and it's legal. But I'm super happy again. I was telling Gary this when we were pushing each other on the swing yesterday. I was telling him, I'm right back to my happiness zone. I'm right back to where I'm not thinking about my creation method anymore, because it's exactly how it was before. It's just modern now. Everything is, and it really did get me thinking though. If I lose this, if I lose the computer, if I have to start again from scratch, am I going to be telling different types of stories? And then it also got me thinking that kind of goes for everybody. If your method of however you create and print your books goes away, like what do you do?
Yeah.
Are we locked into that? I think we'll find a way. I think, like they say in Jurassic Park, life will find a way. So
that was a warning in Jurassic Park, though.
Yeah, that's true. That's probably the worst example I could have come up with. No, but and Gary had some good points too about today we were talking.
Well, but I'm curious with you. So do you feel, so now you're getting ready to do your next project with your new hardware and your new software. Do you expect it to make a material difference in the final? Like, or do you think people are going to look at that and say like, oh, he's kind of changed the secret sauce a little bit? Or do you think it's going to be consistent?
I think it'll be very similar to what I've been doing. If anything, it'll, people will probably, oh, you progressed a little bit. Which I hope they say. But I don't think it's not going to be like night and day, like, wow, this is a whole different, level of animation, because that's not what my animation's about. So, but I think I'll at least be at my baseline where I was before. It can't be any lower. I was like really animating on really super basic stuff. I'm just replacing what I had with with newer versions of it. And I'm not. And then another thing I learned too is tricks and gimmicks get really old really quick, and I don't really care to do those. You know,
That
For you-
sounds
for you-
like a great line for like an 80s rock song too.
Perhaps
Tricks
a
and
sniper.
gimmicks get old real quick. Yeah.
But the Lord is something that's going to stick.
That's true. Striper. So Chase, I just wanted to shout this out. Chase just sent us $10 and said, despite being away juggling 2 day jobs and slowly penciling my graphic novel, just wanted to extend my gratitude with all of you continuing to put out great episodes and insights all around. Thank you. Sorry.
Very nice. That's very nice, Chase.
Thank you,
Really-
Chase.
I've been seeing Chase slightly more on social media, and I've been curious how the graphic novel was going. So it's nice to get that update.
Yeah, I'm glad you're plugging away at it. I was thinking about when you brought that up too, the amount of evolutions of different software that so far have happened in my lifetime as an illustrator and artist, and then like also just adapting and having to learn new software, like even like After Effects that I learned from Corey like a couple years ago, and that's been really beneficial to my work. Or just like audio editing software and how that changes, and eventually you're shifting to GarageBand or something like that, and then like when you're shifting from like Pro Tools to GarageBand, even GarageBand, like the older version, and then like 5 versions later are like totally different kind of organisms. It's just an interesting thing with software, but I was thinking about it too with like hardware, like actual physical art tools, and how whenever I change a tool, it does kind of, it's weird, but it will kind of affect my approach to art when I'm applying it. And so it's a really interesting thought, because it's kind of one of those things of like, does the tail wag the dog, or is the dog wagging the tail kind of thing, where like when I'm approaching a story, I always try to think like, what's the style that I want to approach the story in? And then from that, it'll be like, it'll kind of dictate what tools I'm going to use to get there.
Mm-hmm.
But it's interesting when it happens in reverse, where it's like there's certain systems or tools you might get used to using. Like my favorite brush pen in the universe is the Pentel Pocket brush pen. If that thing ever goes out of commission, which has happened to friends of mine, like they've had like a favorite brush, and then the brush company just disappears. It's like, what do you do to kind of adapt for that when you get so used to a specific tool?
If that happens, I'll recommend you a brush pen. I've got some other pens that are really nice. I used to use the Pentel Pocket brush until I found like I think it's the Zebra, or I forgot what it is, but it's a really nice
And
Japanese.
I want you to try a Kiritake.
Yeah, I keep hearing about
think
that.
that's the one
My
I
only
had,
thing is the Kiritake brushes I've been recommended are like $50 or $40 or something.
Yeah, those are the sable hair ones. There's some that are comparable in price to the Pentel. The Kiritake Red Barrel is only about $5 more, and it's got reloadable cartridges that work really great that use carbine ink. Anyway, I like Kiritake. They're good.
So what about so Jim was saying that, kind of changing this. So it sounds like changing upgrading the computer. Now you've had to change the software, but you don't think it's going to have like a massive impact on the way you tell stories. It might just kind of streamline it a bit.
No, yeah. I just, like I said, I went from no animation software to like a blank slate on my new computer to just rebuilding it to what I had before, but just we built him better and stronger and faster,
Because for those that don't know, you were using a really old version of Flash.
Yeah.
And
CS3, right?
S3.
Right. And so you were using it after Adobe bought it. So it wasn't like Macromedia Flash.
No, actually, well, yeah. I was for the last 10 years or so, but before that I had Macromedia Flash. I've had Flash since the second iteration of it.
Okay, because Adobe bought Macromedia basically to get Flash
Yeah.
and kill Fireworks and a couple of those other things. And then they rolled Flash into a new software, which is basically Flash had gotten a really bad rap on the internet. And so they
Animate CC, right? It was called.
Yeah, they just they rebranded it as Animate. They pretended like it was a new piece of software, but all they did was add HTML5 and JavaScript animation output.
A little side note, Corey, it's great. I love it. It was the right software to pick. I mean,
yeah, good.
Really happy with it.
Good. Yeah. I will I hate it so much, but that's because I think you have like Stockholm syndrome, right? Like it was I actually talked to the head engineer of Animate CC and I was like, why didn't you do this and this and this? Because they had rolled out an Edge Animate, which is like a beta test that I just fell in love with. And I was like, why didn't you keep these features? And he's like, would you like to be part of our alpha testing for this thing? And I was like, sure. What does it pay?
Sir, can you get out of my house, please?
All right. Yeah, seriously. Anyway,
how did you get my phone number? It's 2 a.m.
He basically, he's still tied up in the next room, but he basically said that there were just so many people that were used to the bad interface that they had to keep it. Because if they updated it, they would lose the tens of thousands of people that had gotten used to
it's
like
not
Flash.
The best interface, but again, I tried a few other ones and it's a pretty good interface. It's not but what I do like about it is how seamless the features work on it. Like it never gets stuck on itself. It's just as long as you stay within the program, you're good. And I'm using and then to answer Dee Dee's question, because she says, didn't I get Procreate for the iPad? Which yes, Dee Dee. In fact, for the last 3 years, I think I've been solely animating on the artwork created in Procreate on the iPad. I don't draw on a sketchbook anymore. Not for the films. So I just import all that into the computer. It's just, I don't know. I don't know, man. I feel like I was in a car that you had to like bang on the door and roll up the window a certain way. Now I just got like open window and it's just like, you know, it's the same result, just a lot sleeker and just worry free.
I think the car example is good though, because, you know, I think we've all had that thing where you're driving like an old junker you've been driving forever and it, you know, before it was a junker, you know, and you get so accustomed to it that like, even when you have to switch to like a newer car, there's like that first like week or so of just like, this feels weird, you know, like it's just, it takes a little bit of time to kind of ease into that process and adjust. But
so one of the elements of this question, Josh, was there's a deeper part of this question, which is, I think we've all gotten so used to promoting ourselves through social media. What if social media went away?
Yeah,
that's part of what that's part of what I mean about the work method. I mean, your tools and your methods affect your storytelling. I think we're all in that same boat, and everybody watching this that does something is probably as well, except for Dee Dee. She will make $20 million selling her paintings, and she doesn't need the internet. Okay.
How many of us switched to doing a lot of square images once Instagram became really popular? Because that was something that definitely happened. I mean, I think social media has informed quite a bit. I mean, we're like making things with the intention of making sure that it has a hook within the first 3 to 5 seconds so that people don't skip things, so they don't jump away. Like, yeah, there's a lot of, I mean, even if you're doing like a web comic, you've got to make sure that like every panel or every page that you put out has like some sort of closure, even though it's part of a larger story, because people might come in, you know, sideways and jump in the middle of your story or get lost, or even the algorithmically driven timelines. If that's the only way people are reading your comic or watching your shows or whatever, then you might not be delivered pages in order even or whatever. And I do want to point out Dee Dee's point, because I think she's making my point much more succinctly to me than I am, which is everyone should just sign up for my newsletter, because I do. Yeah, I do. I do think social media is, I don't think it's going to go away necessarily, but I do think it's going to die, and then it'll be reborn in some form. And I'm not sure how, but the Supreme Court is looking at 230 again. Nobody cares about what Meta is doing, and they're dying and pissing everybody off. Google is being attacked like every which way from sideways from the EU, like all the time. TikTok is going to get banned. It's the only thing that the Biden administration, the Trump administration agree on. Like there are so many threats to like the way social media is right now. Those of us that remember social media being a very pliable and temporary thing are not going to be surprised, by that. But like everybody, I think maybe 10 years younger than us kind of feels like, oh, this is the way it's always been. But it used to be that social media platforms would last 2 to 5 years, and then they would just eat themselves, piss everybody off, and then we would go somewhere else.
It was message boards before.
What was that? Message boards? Yeah, message boards and web rings and things like that. Mm-hmm. And it's always been RSS and email newsletters, which I think is the reason I think that that's important, and the reason that I've shifted back to that in the last year is because no one can take that away from me, right? Unless the internet ceases to function, no one can like remove my ability to reach my audience if they choose to jump on my email newsletter. Instagram doesn't get to decide whether or not people see my stuff that day. YouTube doesn't get to decide whether or not they see my stuff that day. If they choose to opt in, then they get to see my stuff, and they can stop at any point in time by opting out. And that's it. It's that simple. And there's no in between. There's no gatekeeper. There's nothing along those lines. So your own website and email newsletters, I think, are one of the most important things that indie artists can be doing right now.
I was kind of curious to know, like, Gary, your experience, like, have you, and maybe this could be an around kind of question for everybody, but what has been the biggest kind of tool shift you've either chosen to do or been forced to do that's kind of possibly caused a style shift in your art? I don't know. I'm kind of curious to hear that. Maybe we can start with, maybe we'll start with Gary. Gary, what do you think?
A tool shift?
Well, like a change of tools or materials that maybe surprised you by like the results where you're like, wow, I approached this totally differently. Or a program where you're like, wow, okay, for me, I think it'll be easier if I make an example.
Yeah, that might help me. Yeah.
Yeah. So for me, like when I first started using Adobe Illustrator, I was surprised at what is so intuitive in Illustrator that is not intuitive at all in Photoshop, and vice versa. And so there's like this really great marriage between Adobe Illustrator and Photoshop, where it's like Illustrator is my favorite thing if I have to do like clean single line weight graphics or typography. But it's like, it's a nightmare. Well, it's not a total nightmare, but it's not as intuitive as Photoshop for like textures and like more organic kind of stuff, which Photoshop is like ideal for. So it's like, I think of that where it's like when I first approached Illustrator, I was kind of surprised by like, oh, okay, I can do these like kind of airplane diagram style illustrations very, very intuitively on, in Illustrator, and in Photoshop, I can kind of paint a little more intuitively and stuff. I don't know if that makes sense.
Yeah. I think, gosh, I have a couple thoughts about this, and I'm trying to decide which one to start with. I think, so people who have followed DVSM from the very beginning might remember that and if you haven't followed from the beginning, I'll explain it now. It started very different. It was mostly print oriented. There wasn't a comic. The comics came later. I was doing prints, and I had a coloring book. And the prints were, I actually pulled to show. They were just goofy. Like one page, I would have a dinosaur, like some scene from, the Dinosaur Martian War, and they were full color. I forgot how big I was doing them, but and it was just kind of this B-movie concept. That's all it was. It was just, this is going to be silly. It's going to be Mars Attacksy. That was sort of the model, like Mars Attacks. When I decided I wanted to do a comic, it required a whole different approach, I think, to the material. And one is tool-wise. I think like what you're talking about was it made me feel like, okay, well, what do I want it to look like? And that's where you sort of are working backwards. I think I want it to be black and white. What's the best way to approach that? What are the tools I want to do? And then you start picking, like, do I want to do digital or traditional? And what are the pros and cons of each? And what is the kind of look I'm going for and all that? So that, you end up in that place. But, what I think more so, and I don't know, the way this topic was originally pitched to me, and this is where I had like an example, was how do your methods or materials dictate your work? Mm-hmm. And that was something, it's like, that definitely was a factor with me, where once I decided, and you especially, Josh, will appreciate this, once I decided it's going to be a comic, and it's going to be a long form comic, like these are going to be fat comics, and it's going to be many installments, so at the end of this whole journey, there may be like 300 or 350 pages of DVSM. I felt like the story had to be worthy of that. Like like I wasn't going to do 300 pages of Mars Attacks. I wasn't going to do 300 pages of just, like B-movie, like 300 pages of Tyrannosaurs mauling flying saucers. I felt like there needs to be some meat on this bone. Mm-hmm. And that's, that's where I think like the method, like the laboriousness of doing a comic made me feel like I need to justify this energy and time expenditure with the story. Like the story needs to be worthy of this investment I'm putting into it. And the analogy I came up with was, if I'm going to cook dinner, if I'm going to go to the store and actually buy groceries and come home and I'm going to make a mess of the kitchen and dirty dishes and, do all that stuff, it's not going to be to make beanies and weenies. Like, I want to make something, I want to make something that's worth this effort. And that's sort of like how it was for me with DVSM. And so in that sense, the method and the materials kind of dictated the story, kind of dictated the product, where it's like, okay, well, if I'm going to spend all this time, like I'm really going to try and make this a rich experience. Yeah. And not just what I was doing before, which is like, here's a picture of an alien being stepped on, like I'm going to have to try and come up with something. I don't know if that's exactly, but I mean, that's how I sort of interpreted the topic tonight. I was like, well, that's sort of my equivalent.
No, I think that's valid. And that's actually a really interesting point too, because I definitely consider that, I invest years into each graphic novel that I'm working on, and I want to make sure that I'm at least telling a story that I'm passionate about and feel like needs to be told. And I feel like if I'm not there, I need to kind of rethink it, because it's just, again, it's such a time investment, and I'm not doing it like for massive amounts of money or anything. So don't get me wrong. I also have to admit, I think when you're done with Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, I do want to see a 300-page Mars Attacks style humor book from you, Gary, because you have a good sense of humor too. So that would be fun to see. But yeah, that's an interesting point. And also the idea that like the length of it would affect your approach and materials, is interesting.
Well, especially like the length of time invested. I mean, and that's why like you especially can appreciate. I mean, I don't know how long it took you to do 2 stories or Jacob's Apartment, but like right now I'm 55 weeks into drawing my latest issue, and that's just one of 6.
Yeah.
You know, it's like I'm not going to put this kind of time in for something that I really am not, passionate about. And that's where it's sort of like, okay, well then what am I going to write about? Okay, well, it's going to have to be something big to make this a worthy investment. It's got to be something that I think has some merit. But
when Gary and I were talking about this on the phone, he told me, well, there's a few things. Well, number one, he told me the audience is stupid and they don't really, and he can pull the wool over their eyes anytime he wants.
I never said that.
And then I said, Gary, how dare you?
First of all, we weren't on the phone. We were on a seesaw. This was after the swings. Sure. And second,
it was a giant phone, a giant toy.
Launched into this weird racist tirade, and I was just trying to change the subject. I don't know.
Against the Belgians. Okay. So, anyways, I want somebody to timestamp this right here and send this to Paul Pate, because I'm going to give you his quote that he gave me. It was very Yoda-ish, and it kind of snapped me out of a haze. Well, we were in the midst of experimenting. Like, he was downloading software and trying it out too. We were calling each other and reviewing it and saying, oh, you know what you could do with this and this, that, and that. And at one point he told me, because I was saying, well, maybe I'll change my style. Maybe I'll just do more drawings because that's what this software works with. It doesn't really work as well when you import PNGs or whatever. And he told me, your work method, your materials should not dictate your storytelling. And so basically he was saying, find the method that you're comfortable working with and work with that. And that got me thinking, and this is actually what Gary and I actually talked about, is I know this is probably true for a lot of people. I want my work method to be the last thing I think about.
Yeah.
I don't want it to be something that's in front of me. I want it to be something that's way off to the side. The ideas, the execution, the energy of the piece that I'm working on, all of that should be in the forefront. The method should be way in the back. It should be like, okay. And then once in a while you can try new stuff.
Yeah.
But I believe that. I believe it should, if you're writing a song, it should be the mood of the song, not the brand of the guitar you're playing.
Yeah, I agree.
And there's a time and a place for that, because if you get a really cool wah-wah pedal, and who doesn't want a cool wah-wah pedal? But if you get a new trick, it's fun to play with that, but it shouldn't be the driving force behind your creativity.
Well, and like one of the funnest things to do if you're like in a room with some musicians and you have like recording time and you just have a bunch of weird instruments, that's one of the funnest moments you can ever experience, because you just play and kind of like you have tools around you to play with. And so like as the mood fits, you're like, I don't know, there's this bell thing here. Let's hit this thing and see what happens, but you're kind of driven more by the mood, and then you have tools all around you to kind of use. I think that's a really good point. I also think it is interesting to me how materials, I work with different materials in a different style. Like when I think about it, it's like oil painting. When I oil paint, I use a very like thick paint kind of style, where it's like wet on wet. It's very immediate. You see a lot of brush work in it. And it doesn't look anything like the stuff that I do when I draw or when I ink or anything like that. It's like, it's a unique thing that is my approach to like oil painting. And it doesn't look like how I approach acrylics or like other mediums like that. So to me, it's interesting that
it's
like the different
intentional. Yeah.
The different mediums allow you like a different kind of voice in what you're trying to say. And so I think this is kind of where I feel like there's like a merge between like what Gary was saying and Jim's saying. It's like, I think there's this interesting thing where it's like the ideas first and foremost, like Jim said, right? Where
if you go back about five comments up, Christopher Runciman has a really probably the best comment of the night at the
About
9:40
Gary's dinner?
No, a little bit
What are we looking for?
for Chris Runciman. If you go up, it's worth it. I'm telling you.
That's where it says
That's
agree,
good news,
Jim.
Jim.
No,
This one?
right there. That one.
Agreed, Jim. Is that your favorite?
I think we can all agree on that. That
Yeah.
agreed, Jim.
That is a powerful comment.
I think we can pull that comment back and have Christopher agree with some really shady stuff.
By the way, I have to say, Christopher Runciman's live stream has been very inspirational.
Oh yeah,
Very unpretentious, very real, and the dude can draw. So
Yes.
Christopher
Yeah, and he's
is
creating the comic every day, which is awesome.
yeah, an inspiring guy for sure. I did want to mention. So Chase said, I only rely on digital for assembling scans of physical artwork, finalizing lettering in case there are typos or if I happen to come up with better wording for a sentence. And then he said he's experimenting with Adobe Illustrator, and I love the flexibility of using digital materials when it comes to editing. Organizing pages in chronological order is oddly therapeutic. I will definitely say that, like, as somebody who's worked both digitally and traditionally, the big advantage of digital that I've found is editing and revising.
Yes.
That's where your speed difference really comes in, because
Right.
for me to revise like a full color page that I've done digitally, it takes like a minute or two. For me to do that traditionally, it's just like a nightmare. So
Well, and I would also say one of the advantages of digital, sort of on the same note, is it removes any peril from experimentation. That's something I've been talking about in different places, is when you're working traditionally, there can be a point where you're afraid to screw something up and you're afraid to ruin it. Where digitally, like there's no such point. As long as you're saving, like you're fine. And you can, it was one of the concept artists at Lucasfilm said this once. He's like, sometimes to figure out how far you can take something, a piece of art, is if you go one step too far. And, that's how like that's where the limit. That's like how far to take it, and then you just take one step back. That's
true.
That's a digital mindset. If you're working traditionally, it's kind of hard to say like, oh, go ahead and overwork it to the point where it's ruined, and then you'll know, 3 hours ago it was perfect. Like, that's not going to be very helpful. Digital, you can do that.
I love that. So one thing comes to mind too from what Jim was talking about that just strikes me as my experience whenever I've had to change a method that I've grown comfortable with. And sometimes that's like external circumstances, like forcing me to change, even in a weird way, like maybe a client or like at my day job, I'm like asked to work in a style I've never worked in before, or like try tackling something I've never done before. But it can also be a scenario of like trying new software or new things that are outside of my comfort zone. I do initially tend to get struck with like fear, like at first of that kind of thing. I don't know if you guys have that too, but like usually my first kind of inclination is like a moment of, oh man, like this is way outside of what I'm capable of. Do you guys have that kind of like when you have to, like, I don't know if you've never drawn like a auditorium or something. You have to draw an auditorium full of people. I did.
I made the mistake of trying to do a Bill Plimpton level animated shot one time, and I was like, okay, no, this is I'm gonna burn my hands.
I feel like, Jim, you do actually tackle a lot of those, like those crazy crowd scenes, where you're like, I'm just gonna animate a whole, giant room full of people.
Strangely, that's in my comfort zone. Like the dumb quote that I've said that is now legendary, that I don't do comics because comics are too hard, so I did animation. but it's really like there's certain things I do that like some animators might not want to do, and they're like, oh, but it's because I'm not animating on the ones, and I'm not doing real intricate animation all the rest of the film, So I think I don't know, my mind can get away with that type of stuff. Plus, I love drawing. I love drawing crowds. Give me crowds. But yeah, I tried to do. I had this one idea for a shot that I forget what it was, but it was something about. It was like the camera. The camera was going to zoom, but the drawings were going to, and then it was going to go into a tube, and the camera. It was like going to be really intricate. And I started doing it, and I was like, I am not programmed to do this. I am not trained to do this. I cannot fake this one. And it was really, it sucked. And I mean, the process, the whole feeling I had sucked. I didn't overcome it. It wasn't my Rocky moment. So, yeah. So, I mean, maybe Rocky won. I did not win.
You know what's interesting though, from those moments of like, not even if you don't win, there's something about kind of tackling it. Like it is almost like getting in a fight. Like there's nobody who like, well, there's two ways of looking at it, but I tend to think like people who've never been in a fight are either too eager to fight or are like way too afraid of fights. It's usually one or the other. It's like they're either unrealistically expecting victory, or they're unrealistically thinking they're just going to get murdered. Like, and I feel like there's kind of a benefit to having been in a fight, like where you can like first off know your limitations, know like how far you can go, and also know like what it's like, and sometimes maybe you'll win, sometimes maybe you lose, but there's benefit to it. I feel like that for sure. An instinct I've grown, and I'm curious if you guys have this as an artist, is when I'm like, whenever I'm thinking about something, and this actually goes outside of art, like whenever I'm thinking about something that's a change, like a change of material or a change of approach, or like, a change. And if I'm filled with fear initially, I've learned that that's like a really good little like bat signal that maybe that's somewhere I should head. Like Jim, the shot you were just describing, that like you said it was, was not like, it wasn't a victory moment when you tackled it, but the fact that you tackled it, it's an interesting thing. Like I wonder if that's something we're conditioned to do as artists, like where it's like you start learning like that. Okay, I want this thing. I'm a little frightened of it.
Yeah.
That's a good sign that maybe I need to head right into it.
I think every project, at least for me, I try to do something new in it, whether people notice or not. I try to do something new in it. And that's for me. It's not really to try to impress, the viewers. And it is kind of like a fighting boredom too. When you get your method just set, it's a good thing, but it's also not a good thing, because then you're just kind of going in a circle doing the same thing all the time. And I like to change it up, at least internally, change it up, every single time. But but yeah, sometimes you swing.
I'm definitely listen. I try to. It's not by design. I think it's just me trying to make sure that each DVSM has a different thing to it, but each one has something that I think is not only is I've never put in a comic before, but I've never drawn before, period. And it's going to make me, and to go with your fight analogy, I think I'm at maybe a more reasonable mentality about it, where I feel like I've been in that sort of situation before. I know I can probably manage, but it's going to be miserable. Like that would be my fight analogy. Like, oh, totally. I think, and this, I don't want anyone to think like this is, ego on my part. I'm not an arrogant artist at all. I think I'm very, very modest with my ability, but I've done it long enough where I do believe eventually I'll figure it out. Like I have at least that kind of base confidence going in, thinking like, eventually it'll get there. Eventually I'll get it across the finish line. But like I just said, like it may be a really painful process. Yeah. And that's kind of where I'm at, where it's like, I know I can do this. It's going to suck. Like this week might suck, or this, these next 5 pages might be rough.
I know,
but it'll eventually get there.
3 out of 5 of us, I can absolutely say for sure, are really good students. Scott, I'm including you with me.
As a good student.
I think maybe Scott and I are wired similarly. I don't think I'm a great student, but I'm really good at learning by experience. Like when I try something and learn,
Yeah.
like, okay, the next time, and that's sometimes banging your head against a wall. I was this weekend was watching some tutorials, and I had to kind of rewatch them a couple of times, but I just remember sitting there thinking, oh yeah, this reminds me of school, except I can turn the TV off and walk away.
I agree with you 100%, Jim. That is exactly me.
Yeah. So what I'm saying is Scott and I are the common man, and you all are. No, but I think Gary, I think you, Josh, and Corey are probably really, really good learners. I think you guys are just wired like that. I don't know. I think you are. I don't got book learning smarts, fellas, but I do got life learning smarts.
But I mean, yeah, because I was gonna say, like, Jim, you just like described like a pretty difficult situation where you're using a specific program. Like I think about like my 2 most used programs are Photoshop and Illustrator, and if I just envisioned that they just disappeared, I would be freaked out by that. And then just learning that the whole process you described at the top, like going through, just sounds like a big headache. But
yeah,
tying this in with what Gary was talking about, this is why it's so important. Like, I think it's great that arts students, and like even when you're young and you're doing art and they're like, here's crayons, like draw something with crayons. Okay, here's chalk, draw something with chalk. Okay, here's charcoal, draw something with that, make some marks. Like, I think that early playing with a bunch of different mediums makes you less freaked out if somebody like hands you like I don't know, like weird stuff I had to do in art school, like okay, we're gonna make our own pens out of a feather, and you're gonna cut the feather, and you're gonna cut the twill or the tine on the feather, and then you're gonna dip it in ink, and you're gonna draw some stuff. You can actually make competent drawings with almost any tool once you've got, but the first time you step outside of your bubble, when you're used to like, I'm used to drawing with crayons and you're given a pencil, or I'm used to drawing with a pencil and you're given a charcoal stick, it's always intimidating.
Can you imagine, like with your project right now, can you imagine if, so you're working predominantly in Photoshop right now, right?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Can you imagine if for some reason Adobe folds, they all get deactivated, Photoshop isn't available anymore, and now you need to finish this project.
Oh, geez.
See, now that's, and that's where it's like, oh no, that's when you realize how boxed in you are by your materials. Yeah. Where it's like midstream, it would be horrible. Like if I had to completely start a new comic tomorrow with a completely new medium, I would manage. But if right now, like page 55 of DVSM, like Adobe and Photoshop went away, and I had to finish the last 5 pages, some other, like, it's like, that would be terrifying.
But how you would tackle that is an interesting thought, because again, I think we've all been doing this long enough to where you do start developing an instinct for, okay, I'm in a pinch, I need to try this different thing, and the flexibility to kind of do it. And like even after, like, the latest program I learned was After Effects. That was super intimidating, but I think where Jim's at, and where Jim and I think are really similar in our learning styles, I suck at learning unless I really have an objective. Like if I have a goal, like if I want to make a music video or something, then suddenly I can learn whatever program I need to learn to get that video I want to make done. But if I have no project and I'm just like watching tutorials, I suck so bad at learning anything. Like guitar, same thing. Like I would suck if I was just learning cover songs. But if I want to write a song, suddenly I'm gonna like start learning weird stuff like hammer-ons and like different tricks, because I just want that sound and like I need it. So I feel like from doing that, like from kind of being in a pinch where you're like, I envisioned this thing, I don't know how to get there, but I know from experience that I can get there somehow.
Mhm.
I think that helps us navigate hard, actually nightmarish scenarios like what you described. That sounds like a nightmare.
Yeah, that's. I'm sorry to plant that idea,
Well,
but
Yeah, that freaks me out.
It's
Adobe's
like,
going to be fine. Adobe
Yeah.
will be fine.
it's like when Frodo had to take the ring to Mount Doom. Okay, he had to take the ring to Mount Doom. You know, it wasn't like, well, I'll take it halfway. He had to, and that's why he forced himself. So what I'm saying is, Adobe is like Sauron.
Mhm. That's true.
I was wondering where that analogy was going, and I didn't expect that.
He's
Now I want to
all-seeing
throw
eye.
you into the fires of Mount Doom.
It's
Gary,
all
when you
seeing
guys
eye.
were on the Teetotter, is that what
Yes.
it's called?
The seesaw? Yeah.
Yeah, the seesaw.
Yeah.
You know, I think that's why he kept saying "my precious" and kind of he was holding like an Adobe subscription. I didn't even know they physically made those anymore. But
Yeah. He had the
I wish-
box.
I wish they did. You're telling me, man. I wish they did. Yeah.
So I have a question for the what I would consider the continuing series people here, which would be Scott and Jim. I guess myself, but I was interested in them. So now, like Jim, you have kind of a look to your features and a look to the way. Yeah, you also have a look, but I mean, you have a look to your characters, the way and the way the kind of. You've described it as like a minimal animation style or something. There's a word you've used to describe like what you're doing, the approach to it.
Masterpiece.
And then Scott, you are
masterpiece.
Yes.
Masterpiece. Yeah, maybe that was it. That was the word. And Scott, you've got one comic to go in Young and the Dead.
Yeah.
How conscious of you, or do you even care about? Do you even think about keeping it visually consistent with everything you've done before? Mm-hmm. So like I correct me if I'm wrong, I don't see a lot of halftone or like zipatone in Young and the Dead. You wouldn't add it now for the sixth one.
No, it's all grayscale. I mean, honestly, the only reason why I'm still traditionally inking is because I want to keep the look going. I mean, I was able to switch to digital pencils because you don't see the pencils. But I was afraid that if I went digital inks, even though it would speed up the process and be a lot cleaner, and you'd be able to see a dramatic change from when I started to do digital inking. So I'm trying to keep it close. So that
do you ever feel
you guys heard it?
I'm
here
sorry,
first.
I'm taking over with the question here, but I've been dying to know this.
We have a spoiler from Frank Salazar who said issue
color.
6 of Young and the Dead will be in color. Okay.
So. Well, in a way, I was thinking about, do you ever feel, and Jim also, do you ever feel a little boxed in by the precedent? Or like for you, like now, like Scott, you doing number 6, do you ever think like, boy, if I was doing this, if this was issue 1, I would do, things maybe a lot differently, but I don't feel I can.
So there are a few things that I've toyed around, that I've thought about. One, funny that Frank mentioned color, because I don't regret doing it in black and white. For one, it makes it's more economical, and I love black and white. Mine has grayscale, so it's not just like line art. So there's still coloring involved, but it's in grayscale. But I mean, I guess and this isn't because I like color more, because in a lot of cases I like black and white art more. But I think in the case of my book, because of the time period and everything, if I was going to start from scratch and kind of money wasn't an option, and I knew it was going to sell, and if I could add that color, I would try to go with sort of a kind of pulpy, like new print on newsprint, halftone dots, and have it look kind of like that, or at least some aspect of that. I would probably do something like that maybe. And it's possible, at the last issue, when I do a Kickstarter, when I collect it, I may say, hey, if we can hit this thing, then I'll hire a colorist and we'll have a color version of it. So I mean, that's not out of the question. So I have thought about that. The other thing is, I made a choice early on that I wasn't going to have any captions or anything like that. And sometimes I wonder if that's a regret. And then I think, like, You know, like with Blade Runner, how it has the narration, and then there's the director's cut, and it doesn't have the narration, and you know,
Director's cut's worse. Sorry to say that.
I tend to agree. I I like that narration. It makes it feel more like a noir to me. But
wow, that's a hot take. I have to say, we're gonna have to do a separate episode about how you guys are wrong.
Because I 110% back Scott, and
but
Harrison Ford, talk about passive aggressive. He is dripping with resentment every line he delivers that he has to do this voiceover. But go ahead, getting off track.
Yeah. So I mean, but there are times where I think maybe I should have had captions, or because there's nothing like meanwhile, there's nothing like, and there is a lot of scene changes and things like that, and I'm just hoping that the audiences knows what's going on. But you know, I don't know. Sometimes I wonder, well, maybe I shouldn't have made that rule, and why did I make that rule that I wasn't going to have any kind of captions or anything like that? So
it is interesting having limitations that you have to live with for years. I think that one of the reasons I love kind of shifting styles is because, like, right now while I'm working on Not Death But Love, it's like it's this weird rendered approach that I haven't used, you know, in the last book, and so it's fun, like, and it's challenging, and it's like using a different part of my brain where I'm like, oh yeah, I remember some of this stuff with like rendering classes, because it's like I'm using tones again, so it's like it's a little fun to kind of shift it up. But it is interesting when you specifically pick a style that you're then kind of married to for, you know, an entire project. It's interesting. I'm curious to hear, because like with Jim, it's like your style has stayed somewhat consistent, but it's definitely evolved. Like I feel like especially with like lighting and editing and honestly even
cinematography. I mean, I don't know if that's the right word for animation, but the cinematography has evolved, I think.
Every film, I mean, I haven't changed my method that much in the last 5 years or so. But like I say, every film I try to do something different, even if it's behind the scenes. I try to a new approach at something, or something I haven't done before.
A new approach or a different direction?
A huge new direction.
Okay, just kind of curious.
You know,
oh,
and sometimes it's hard. You know, a new direction is hard, and you've just gotta swallow your pride.
You just gotta
lean into it.
Swallow pride.
You know, sometimes it sneaks up on you from behind, but you just got to really power down on it and get through it. So
I love that.
The way, you know.
Thank you for indulging in that, Jim. So Frank said a color series of Young and the Dead would be cool. Let's see here. Would be cool once the original run is done, but that would be a ton of work. I also feel like maybe you guys can touch on this too, because Gary, you're kind of in this boat with Dinosaurs versus Marsbots, where it's like you've kind of bit off like the project, and there's a specific style, and it evolves a little bit.
Yeah,
but it is pretty remarkably consistent. So like if I look at even the pages you're doing now, and the first pages, it's like while you're challenging yourself and pushing it a little further, it still stylistically feels like it's in the exact same family. Like it's the same series. And Scott, same thing, like Young and the Dead. Jim definitely has a signature look to your stuff. Do you guys ever find like it a challenge to kind of remain consistent with that? And also, do you also find it like the thing Scott was mentioning with like making a story choice where you're like, okay, in this story, I'm not going to have, you know, first person. It's only going to be third person or whatever.
That's a good one.
Do you kind of find, do you find that you kind of have to just trust the choice that you made, like initially? Because it's like Scott, it's like it would be weird if out of nowhere the last issue it's got like thought balloons.
Well, it does.
You know?
I'm not opposed to thought balloons. I do have thought balloons.
Okay, so maybe it's not thought balloons, but narrative boxes. Sorry.
Nudity.
Yeah. The only thing that's a little bit of a difference.
Nudity and directions.
There is an epilogue, so but that's kind of that'll be like it'll be like a transition, like the story will end and then there'll be a blank page that says epilogue, and then after that, but other than that, there's really nothing that says this is and part of that, I think the reason, looking back, the reason why I did that was because I didn't want to explain what time it was in. Yeah, because I want this to be, I don't want somebody to look at it and say, oh, the Rubik's Cube wasn't popularized until 1983 or something. You've got, and this takes place in this time and all this stuff, or different things like that. So, and plus it's sort of an alternate universe anyway. So
yeah. And if people ask you what time it is, the answer is it's timeless. That's the
time. Dr. Hodges, would you like to go next?
Sure. Yeah, there are I'm not really feeling burdened by them, but there are choices I made with the first book, that now I feel obligated to either stay consistent with, like visually, like for example, I don't even have thought bubbles in DVSM. Like it's very much like I kind of just treat them like screenplays. So you never get like what someone's thinking about. There's no narrator, there's no third party person, anything. So it's all what you see is what you get. What you see is what you would see if you were there, So I have to kind of be consistent with that. I also have never done halftone or anything. There are times I yearn for it, especially because drawing strictly in black and white is sometimes a real pain. Like depending on what you're drawing, like that really makes it technically challenging. And if you had that option, I saw an organic farmer getting interviewed recently saying like, I'd pay $1 million just for 1 gallon of Roundup. I mean, he was just like, and that's kind of how I feel about, sometimes I'll be drawing a page. It's like, I would do anything just to be able to use, screen tone one time, just to make this work a little bit better. But then also just basic, like the format, like I've kind of created this precedent of there will always be an introduction, to each one of the comics, like a written, almost like an introduction to a book. And at the end, there's always a fake news article. Like a fake newspaper clipping that now I feel like it's not really a burden, but it's not something when I did that first one, I imagined like, oh, now I'm going to do this every single time. Now I feel
realize
like
the box you were kind of creating.
Exactly. And now it's like, oh, well, this is actually, now this is the format, and I guess now I've got to kind of play in that format every time. It's a little, fortunately, I'm not, like I said, I'm not feeling burdened by it. Yeah. But it's not something I ever anticipated when I just made a lot of decisions just sort of off the cuff with that first one. I was like, yeah, I'll just do this. Yeah, that'll be cool. And now you're doing this series and you're like, oh, I guess it's probably like the scroll for Star Wars or something where it's like, oh, I guess now we're doing this every time, and did they think about that?
That's so funny because it reminds me like when you first start working sequentially, like I remember this vividly. Like I thought it was like everyone, I thought it was going to be way easier to do sequential work than it is. And I remember the first time it dawned on me, oh wait, I just picked that costume and now I have to turn that costume around. Yeah. And now I'm stuck with that costume. Like I'm stuck with that shirt. I'm stuck with those pants. I'm stuck with that pair of shoes with like specific laces that I decided to articulate. Like, sequential just brings a whole different realm to like the kind of traps you build for yourself without realizing.
Oh yeah.
When you first do a room scene and you're like, oh, this is great. And then you're like, crap, I got to draw that shelf every time.
I sent the message in our Artcasters group chat where I had complained for like a year while I was drawing 1997 that I had the main character with a black eye, and I had to draw this effing black eye over and over and over and over and figure it out from different angles. Like, you know, if she's looking this way, what does it look like? If she's looking that way, what does it look like? And I came out of it saying, like, this was the worst thing I could have done to myself. And then
I think in the comments, they don't know that you work traditional. They think you work digital.
they what?
They think that you work, well, you work traditional, right?
No, it's a blend. It's a blend. No, it's mostly digital. There's a little bit of
you don't
traditional.
need these brushes that have patterns built into them.
There are brushes that will do screen tone patterns. I see Dee Dee's comment now, but the problem is I've done 2 comics where I never used screen tone. So now I feel like it's breaking the look of DVSM to introduce it. I feel like, well, I missed that window.
Also,
if I wanted to do screen tone, I needed to do it in the very first book.
I've learned something about Gary's work method too, and this is true, that I think your work method is like, it's akin to a really, really tough workout regimen, because you're working out really hard and you're killing yourself and you're so sore and you're hating it. You're like, I can't wait not to work out. And then when you're done with a project, it's like you're done working out, but then you go look in the mirror and you're like, look at my shredded abs.
Yeah.
No, you know, and this came up. It was a live stream. I think maybe the last live stream I did, or the one prior, where I was talking about how I feel like Jim and Christopher are kind of happy warriors. There's like a lot of joyfulness when they're working. They seem like they're really having fun.
We enjoy killing. And
where I feel like, and correct me if I'm wrong, you guys, but I feel like I'm probably more in the club of like Josh and Corey, where I would not call working fun. I would call it satisfying. I would call it rewarding, but I can't say I'm having fun. To me, like a good analogy would be like going to the gym. I feel good about going to the gym. I wouldn't say I enjoy going to the gym.
I feel
like
good about returning from the gym after I've went. I don't feel good about going there.
Yes, exactly. And that when I finish a page in DVSM, I feel good. But like the whole process, that's kind of back to me saying like, I know I can do it, but I know it's going to be a miserable go. Like the whole time marching through it, it's like, oof, like I feel like I'm running a marathon. But as soon as it's done, I'm like, yes, that looks pretty cool. You know, like then I have that moment. But
I kind of feel like even Jim, like, you know, I know Jim's kind of happy warrior, but I've definitely seen Jim, like, you have an objective and that invigorates you to spend hours like editing this thing to get the 2 seconds right or whatever. You know, it's like,
yeah. I mean, it's I mean, you could look at it like a sacrifice. It's all time, but yeah, I mean, I put in hours to doing this. It's just that I really enjoy it. There's parts of it I hate. I really do. Like of animating, there's certain parts of animating I really hate, but they're so minimal that, I mean, the rest of it I love. I love planning the films. I really love doing the art to the films. I love editing, the music, just everything, the dancing, the singing, the whole shebang. No, but I mean, there's not enough that I hate in it to make the whole process unpleasant. Yeah, but there are parts of it I do not like, and I just get through them. You know, and then, but one thing that Gary and I definitely have in common is that when we finish a project and we're exhausted, we just collapse over the finish line like those runners that crawl over, and we do that, and then we like catch our breath. And then we go, hey, you know what? There's another marathon next weekend.
Yeah, exactly.
Yes. Yeah. And that I can't explain, but, and I was just telling Jim this the other day, like I'm very close to the end and I'm tired. I'm wiped out.
And I was like, Gary, don't talk like that. That's really horrible. And then he meant his project. I was like, okay.
I'm almost out of gas, but and I'm already like, I've been fantasizing about like, oh, I'm gonna watch all these movies, I'm gonna play all these video games, I have this stack of books I'm gonna read, like it's gonna be so great when I'm done, it's gonna be like a vacation. But I told Jim, and I have been telling everybody, like, I bet you 6 or 8 weeks later I'll be like, you know, I feel like I'm gonna start writing the script for the next one. Like I know, and I won't even have to mark my calendar or remind myself like, oh, better get back to it. Like it'll self-generate. because that's always how it's
been.
been.
The song of the siren calling you. Again.
It is bizarre though, because like right now I'm in that midway point of this monster graphic novel. I'm like almost at the halfway point. And right now I can't see straight. So it's like I can't see the end, I can't see the beginning. I just kind of hate comics. But yeah, the second the last page is done, I know, like, even if I'm just like, I'm done with comics forever, this is a waste of time, it's just destroyed my life. I know that like a week later, I'm going to be like, yeah, but there's that. Like 2 stories, book 2. And then after that, it'd be fun to do a sci-fi, and it might be kind of fun to do this other genre because there's so many things. That is kind of the weird thing. You know, I know when Scott like puts the period at the end of the Young and the Dead sentence, there's like a million projects that are comic related that he's going to try to tackle, you know?
Yeah. I mean, I already kind of know one that I'm going to work on after this, but
I'm hoping it's the same one. Because that's a pretty exciting one.
Well, this could be a completely subjective thing, but I would encourage you not to think about it. I was telling everybody that I think I screwed myself. I think like 5 weeks ago, I started thinking, you know what I did? Like a moron. I started making a list in my notes of like, these are the movies I'm going to watch and the video games I'm going to play and the books I'm going to read. And because this was like 10 weeks from the finish line, I think that was way too early to be thinking about being done. Like all it did was exhaust me more. Like I would say, don't think about it. Just stay in the zone, treat it like a marathon, one foot in front of the other. Just be surprised when the finish line comes. Don't look for the finish line. Just be surprised. Like, what? I'm done?
You're like,
don't be mean.
But what you're doing, Gary, is defining the finish line. So you have a visual of what rewards lie at the end. So like to me, I think that's half the trick is a self-reward system. I do this all the time. I'll do this in small chunks where I'll be like, I'll get home from work. I'll be exhausted. I don't want to work on comics. I'm like, okay, if you work on comics for like 4 hours, then I will allow you, and this is me talking to myself, 10 or 20 minutes of noodling around on YouTube. Just whatever you want to look up. Look up stupid stuff.
So if you have
I do that. Yeah.
If you have the sound effect of the audience going, "Aw," then you should play it after this next statement, because this is true.
Hold on. I don't have that sound effect, but I might have something.
We can all do it. We can all go on.
Okay, go ahead.
Well,
go ahead.
For me,
you have to give us a cue. You have to give us give us a point.
Do the Isaac hand.
Yeah.
Okay. Go for it, Jim.
For me, the reward is actually getting to work on my animation.
Aww.
I love it.
Josh seemed unconvinced by that. He didn't.
No, I was just trying to navigate the terrible. Hey guys, wouldn't it be awful if we had this soundtrack playing the entire time we were doing Artcasters? Yeah.
Sounds like I'm gonna start singing a song from Rant or something. Working on animation. Oh man, you got my vibe. Sorry.
As I was talking about in my live stream, I see a clear difference between rewarding and satisfying, which I would put in the same category, and enjoyable and fun. Like to me, those are, at least for me, those are different. But I think that's what's interesting to me about watching people like Jim and Christopher work, and maybe Dee Dee too, where it's like I don't think that's as much of there's not a clear delineation there like it is with me.
It's
I envy people who have fun.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I enjoy parts. I don't want to make it out like, oh, it's an excruciating process and oh, it's miserable. But like it's work. It's kind of it's toiling, you know, like you're it's the marathon.
Yeah.
Yeah. I just think, I mean, what it really boils down to is that Dee Dee, Chris, and I are better than you guys.
That's true.
But
or that. Or maybe it's that.
I only mean that in an artistic way.
Sure. No, actually, I kind of envy it. And it has made me think, my takeaway from it was either, maybe it doesn't even matter. Maybe it doesn't matter. Like, you know, going back to the analogy I use all the time, like it doesn't matter how you get to the island as long as you're getting there. Like if this process if my disposition works for me,
That's a
then
Jeffrey
maybe it's
Epstein
fine.
quote, isn't it?
What's that?
That's a horrible Jeffrey Epstein quote. Why do you?
It's not an
Why do you
Epstein quote.
keep saying that?
Not everything about islands has to do with Epstein. How many times do I have to tell you? But anyway, but then also, I also, on the other hand, look at examples like Christopher and Jim and think like, is there something about my mental approach to this that I can tweak where I do enjoy the process?
Yeah. It's interesting, like, the definitions we've all kind of given of our processes and stuff. It's interesting to me, like, and this can tie back to like the materials dictating work kind of thing. When you set out to do a project, you kind of build this box for yourself, like your own limitations of like what the rules are for the project. And maybe you can go a little outside of those rules, but generally, like as a creative, like you need those self kind of inflicted guidelines to kind of be creative. Because when it's like all blue sky, it's paralyzing, so if you have to make choices like okay, I'm going to do this only in black and white, because again, that gives limitations.
There's an unspoken though about my process, something we haven't even mentioned that is an advantage, I think, for keeping things hitting the refresh button mentally, is that my process envelops really three things. It's the art, it's the animation, and it's the music or voice. But so when I get sick of one of them, I can go spend a month on the music, and then I get sick of the music, go back to the art,
It is really cool because it's like I can see it when you're working the process too. Like even if you hit like a certain point where you're like, okay, now I'm going to work with voice acting. Now I'm going to work on character design. And it's like, you kind of get enjoyment out of each thing, but that's a good point. Like when you get tired of one, you can kind of hop over to the other.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. See, and like Josh and I, we're at a stage where like, it's drawing again.
Yeah. We're just,
and so there's
a great punk band, Creed. You created your own prison.
That's so profound. Oh my gosh.
I mean, really, where are you going to, you're like,
I've heard some people say it's the greatest punk.
Yeah.
Actually.
That's true.
Yeah.
That's true. Well, I mean, you guys are kind of in the know though. That's for people who like know about like really obscure, indie music.
Yeah. Yeah. You probably haven't heard of this band, but Creed
I'm going to make you a mixtape.
You guys, I heard a recent like kind of garage band that is kind of amazing. They're called Stained, and they did a cover of The Sounds of Silence that's better than Simon and Garfunkel. I just thought,
is that a Simon and Garfunkel song? I thought it was a Stained song.
I thought it was a Stained song.
Yeah,
I don't know. You know how you know Stained is cool? It's that they left the E out of Stained.
That's true. Everyone knows this.
Everyone knows that. Like that's if you weren't sure about Stained, as soon as you looked them up and you were like, whoa, look how they ditched that E.
Like maybe the next time we all get together on a show, the topic should be, does your misspelling of your name dictate how awesome your music is?
Yeah. I think the answer is yes.
Of course.
100%.
We wouldn't even need to do a show. It'd last for a second.
We could actually do this show right now. This is 360 or 380, 358. Which episode are we right now?
Hold on, I'll announce it. Okay, welcome to Artcasters number 360. Our guests have an interesting topic. Gary, what was the topic that we just proposed?
I think we all agree that if you leave letters out of your band name, you become that much cooler.
Interesting. Okay. Yeah. And we'll get into the topic after we do our intro. Scott, what do you think about that? Do you think misspelling of band names? Yes, no?
As of how
like how legit is the punk band if the name has a misspelling, preferably like an X or a,
it's like
a missing vowel.
Like, so
Or maybe a Z instead
Are
of
you
an
talking
F.
about like a punk
Yeah.
band? Like, are you talking about like if you spell Def Leppard DEF, and or like
Make it cooler and spell it DF.
Yeah.
Like make it even cooler.
Mhm. What do you think, Jim? Your thoughts?
I just think you mentioned X, and they are a punk band,
Yeah, it's true. It's true.
and they spell their name correctly.
I don't know if they're that punk though. I mean, like they're nowhere near like Creed or Stained, really.
Or the Kings of Punk, Nickelback.
Yeah, that's
Chase is
we
bringing
didn't
up The
even bring up
Weeknd.
Nickelback.
The Weeknd dumped an E too. Did that help them?
Oh, wait,
course.
hold on. We have an update from Dee Dee. She says
Disturbed.
she looked it up and it's Disturbed.
My own bit failed because I don't know the music. I feel like it's about the same though, right?
How come Disturbed doesn't spell it with a Z?
That's true. It should be Diz.
oh, is that who did Sound of Silence?
Disturbed. Yeah.
Oh, is that right? Oh, yeah.
I thought that was Stained for a
Oh,
second.
well. They're all kind of the same. I also, hononestly, I don't think I could pick either one of them out of a lineup. Like I would probably mix them up.
As much as Disturbed, but
yeah.
Wow.
I think I'd probably put them all in a cocktail and call them just legit punk rock, really.
The real punk rock.
All I know is that Corey's running through his room, ripping down the posters as we speak before he goes back on camera.
He doesn't want anyone to glimpse. Yeah.
So.
They're always coming back.
I love talking about music so much.
Especially great bands like Disturbed and Stained.
Uh-huh.
Could we spend like 4 hours discussing like the particular fingering of the guitarist on some obscure album, please?
Yeah, okay, let's bring up a real obscure one. Okay, you
That
guys.
poor guitarist.
Hanson's guitarist. Probably one of the best guitarists of all time. I'm just throwing it out.
Wow.
And I do enjoy their soda, Hanson, though. They're pretty good.
They do make good soda. Yeah.
Yeah, they do.
Mm-hmm. All right, guys.
Have we officially gone off the rails here?
We have gone off the rails on a crazy train, but it's
and
not
rails
a bad
spelled
one.
with a Z.
Yeah, with a Z. Mm-hmm.
We have
off
a
the
really
rails
good...
is going to be our garage band that
should be
all
our
of
new
us are
band,
going to start.
Off the rails.
Off
with a
the
Z.
rails. And we'll.
We have a
I
really
have
good
this
active chat tonight. I'm very impressed by the chat.
That's true. I think when we start our band, we should mix metal and rap, but like not really metal or really rap. Just kind of find this nice in between.
About country and rap, we can call it crap.
Wow.
That would be good.
I like that.
Really
Mm-hmm.
Hey, by the way, I think
not in my backyard.
I think everybody would agree that Christopher did have the comment of the night with Jim. Agreed, Jim. I think that was succinct, and I think it kind of summarized how we all feel.
How would you do that?
Oh, my cousin told me it's like mutli, like cru. It's like it's really.
That's great.
All I'm saying is umlaut is a pretty amazing word. And with
word.
that, I think we delved into the topic pretty
We should have a
well.
band called Umlaut and have umlauts on the umlaut.
Yeah.
I love that. That would actually be a great metal band. You could just
How would you say
do metal
umlaut
covers called umlaut.
They'd be Norwegian metal for sure.
Yeah.
It would definitely be. It'd be like Viking metal. Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah.
I like it. Yeah,
And then our
Norwegian black metal jazz.
Isn't umlaut? Isn't that a Hanson song?
Yeah, I love it. All right. We did it. We killed the topic in a good way.
So,
I think
this is
bullet
kind of
pointed
expressive
everything.
how like when you're working on a project, how you just peter out and it just like self-destructs at the end. So this is a good example of that.
I like the
that's a terrible lesson. No.
I feel like this was a fun self-destruct. Christopher said, really great show. These two guests make good funnies.
Thank you, Christopher.
Mm-hmm.
Agreed.
Yes, agreed. Dinosaurs versus Mars Bots, a notorious funny pages book. Jim Lujan's cartoons.
By the way, Josh,
Funny.
all the cool kids are calling it D versus M now. You got to know that.
Yeah, that's something I'm going to start pushing. It doesn't matter right now, but I am planning on really pushing D versus M in the future. Jim, actually, we had a really good conversation. Maybe this could be a future Artcasters about rebranding.
Should we do it right now?
Like not just branding, but
Artcasters
rebranding.
It's D
161
versus M, but it has umlaut.
Yeah, there's umlauts for sure.
Mm.
Lots of umlauts.
I do think umlauts would assist. That actually sounds cool. I'd love to have one about branding. Mr.
I'm just feeling like I need a new direction, a great big new direction with my my D versus M branding.
Yeah,
it
might be a bit of a stretch, but I think you can get there.
But you know what? I'm not afraid. I'll just grab this challenge with both hands. And
when they go low, I go high.
Oh my gosh, you guys are amazing. Okay. Keeman said, great show tonight with two guys with humor on here. Thank you.
Thank you.
A lot of people mentioning the humor. Thank you for the lively chats. Thank you for the super chats for those who send them. And then
Jim and I get a piece of that, right? Well, that's I mean, that was part of this.
We'll talk about this. We'll talk about that. Whether you get
the
a
only one
piece
besides Josh that gets a piece of it is YouTube, and they take a pretty good chunk.
That's true. They do take a chunk.
Oh, do they get a chunk? How does that even work? Do you mind saying?
I think they take do they take like 50 or 40 or 50%?
I don't think it's like 50%, but it's pretty up there. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
But we'll have to look at the percentages and get back on that. All right, guys. Thank you. And is there anything we didn't touch on that like kind of ties? I think it's a good topic. It's very open. Like we could have probably gone on. Okay. Let's close out. So where can everybody find your work? Let's start with Corey Kurt. Corey, where can everybody find your stuff? And also, I was asked whether you were drawing a uterus by Dee.
Yeah.
Hold on. Let me zoom in on that particular part. I'm doing. I don't know how well we can see that. That's kind of a mushroom cloud.
Yeah.
So everything's being kind of irradiated, and so we're kind of seeing a little bit of X-ray bone. So that's just kind of the top of kind of the pelvic bowl.
Mm-hmm. So we're talking about pelvic bones, Dee. Get your mind out of the gutter.
That is very clearly a female, right?
That's true.
Yeah,
that's true.
Yeah. So.
All right.
Are you drawing that off of reference?
Live.
I
mean, I looked.
Yeah,
I looked.
Do you have a moth woman
or formerly live model reference?
Your basement.
Yeah, I have a mutant moth, but she's not wearing the face mask anymore. So.
And are you going to lower the basket?
He's not going to know that reference, Jim. He's not. What are you doing?
Put the lotion in the basket.
Yeah, you can find my stuff at CoreyKerr.com. So yeah, go over there, and if you want to give me the equivalent of a super chat, then you can buy a T-shirt or a mug or a laptop case.
And if anybody's out there that is not on his newsletter, please sign up. I can testify.
Okay, I will say this, Jim, longtime supposed friend. He called me,
alleged friend.
Wait, you guys! Shots fired. This is an
Supposed is a good word.
He called me recently to get some advice about his new computer, which I gave him for free. And I found out that he is not on my newsletter. And he
your newsletter. I got your newsletter. I have it in my mailbox.
Because you signed up while I was on the phone with you last week.
But technically, I am on your newsletter.
Wow. Yes.
Guys, this is
it's like Festivus. It's the airing of grievances. This is what else? What else?
Okay, you guys, it's debate night. Jim, you have 1 minute to respond. Corey, please let Jim
report.
I measure friendship transactionally, and so that's how everything works.
I bought a mug. How many people here have a Corey Kerr mug? That's what I think.
Point. Yeah.
This is getting intense, you guys. Yeah. All right, so we know where to find Corey Kerr and mugs. Hashtag mug Corey. Just saying. All right, Jim. where can everybody find your stuff and check out your cartoons and animations and all that?
Go to
lovely stuff.
jimlujan.com. You can see all the animations to your sick to your stomach, and they're all free and stuff. And to buy cool stuff, if you want, you can go to
Yes.
we have a Society 6. I think if you go to Society 6/Jim Lujan, I think it takes you there. The mugs are very cheap.
They are great mugs too. I have
$98 each. They're a very good deal, plus tax and shipping, which comes out to $300, $350. I don't know.
Yeah, they're about like $3,000. Worth it.
What else? I am starting a new project. I'll let you guys know about it first as soon as I have some more details. Yeah, it's Society 6. Thank you, Dee Dee. Society 6. And I just thank you guys, and thank you, Paul Pate, for and thank you, Corey Kerr, for lending me the ears, one ear each, and thank you, Artcasters, for having on. I think this was a really good topic. I had fun. Thank you.
Yes, and let me give you that link, Dee Dee. This is where you will find Jim Lujan mugs. I just sent it in the chats. All right. Cool. Yeah. So, but it's society6.com/Jim Lujan. And all right, Gary, thank you for coming on. And
Thank you for having me.
Yeah, you're welcome. I wanted to say
That threw you off.
in a really passive way. Yeah.
Just saying, me being polite just completely blew
I know.
up
I'm
your
like,
brain.
what's your agenda here, Gary?
Yeah.
Why would you say thank you?
Yeah.
Okay. Where can people find DVSM and all that lovely stuff?
The two best places. First, I would encourage people to, if you're only going to go to one place, go to my YouTube, which is just under my name, Gary Hodges, or I think it's Gary Hodges DVSM, just more or less like I have it here without the hyphen.
And you said live stream coming on Monday, right?
Live stream Monday, and that's where you're going to get all the latest updates about the status of my latest book, which is coming relatively soon. You'll get up-to-minute updates of where I am with the last few pages. There'll be a trailer at some point. There'll be pre-order announcements, all that stuff. So that's the best place. The second best place, very good, but only second best, would be Instagram, where it's dinosaurs versus Marsbots, dinosaurs vs Marsbots.
Hey, Gary, real quick question. Why is the M so devious? I don't get it. Is it like a, it's going to be revealed later. Okay, I get it.
By the way, since Jim is gone now and he won't hear this, please never have me on when he's on again. Like, just
That's
please.
why they put Scott in the middle as a buffer. He's like a marriage counselor.
Scott, you got it. This is getting out of control. You got to moderate these people. First, I guess before we have you do the moderation.
Oh no! Now we're here.
Yeah,
it's a clash of titans.
I want to.
Okay, guys, make up. I was going to say, Scott, before I jump to you, I'll just let people know where they can find my stuff because I forgot you always close it. So you're on my channel. If you haven't yet, hit subscribe, hit the bell. That way you get notifications when I'm about to go live. Thanks again for the super chats and everybody who came in the comments section. And now, Scott, you must moderate this whole madness and solve all our conflicts.
Yeah, somehow bring this mess to a close. I don't know how. But...
So, how do people find your stuff, and then how do they follow this mad show where, like, check this out, like the order of people on this show just switches around like mad. The order of our channel switches around like crazy. It's hard to keep track of. How do people keep track of that?
Yeah, so first, like Josh said, you can find my stuff at my website, circworks.com, where you'll find my digital products, the Comic Maker Toolkit, Amazing Comic Book World Builder, Hero Design Studio. What else? There's tons of stuff up there. In addition, you can also find my comic books, Young and the Dead, issues 1 through 5. Plus variant covers, all that stuff. And then on my YouTube channel, you can find my series Making Comics 101. It's everything you need to know about making comics. It's the most comprehensive free course you're going to find on making comics, and it's on YouTube on my channel. Yeah, that's all I got to promote. And then this show, we do this show every single week. We usually have a guest or two guests in this case. It's typically on a Thursday, but who knows? Maybe next week it might even be on a Wednesday. We're talking, but anyway, what I'm getting at is that it gets a little confusing because we have a different topic. The other thing is that it sometimes it'll be on Corey's channel, sometimes it'll be on Josh's channel, sometimes it'll be on my channel. So if you want to know exactly whose channel it's going to be on, who the guest is going to be, what day, all that stuff, join our mailing list. There's a link in the description of this video. Click on that, and you'll be alerted usually about 30 minutes before we go live when we are going to go live. And click on that link, and you'll know exactly you'll be taken to the show.
Awesome.
So definitely check that out.
Awesome. And thanks. And if you guys are watching this after the fact, let us know what materials have dictated the way you work and when you've last had to switch materials, how that went for you, and all that fun stuff. All right. Thanks, guys, and have a good night. Bye.